I am Oran Smith with Palmetto Promise Institute. It was in 1994 in a book entitled Reclaiming the Legacy that I first personally supported the idea of selling Santee Cooper or privatizing Santee Cooper. I must tell you at that time, most of my interest in that was ideologically driven. I just did not believe the state government should be in the utility business. That was also in 1994 in the wake of a Legislative Audit Council report that said that Santee Cooper and its board was doling out a lot of contributions to local charities that were friends of members of the board of Santee Cooper. So the question was both an ideological one and an anti-corruption one. That was in 1994. So when the issue came to the fore again after the failure of the expansion of VC Summer, I had the opportunity, along with Dr. Kathleen Player with Clemson Economics Associates. She is the economist who has been working with us on a number of major research projects related to Santee Cooper, which I hope some of you have seen. The very first was called The Uncertain Future of Santee Cooper, and it included her assessment of what rates would need to be to cover the losses of VC Summer 2 and 3. Those rates were reviewed, and at one point on the Senate side, when questioned, the CFO of Santee Cooper indicated that those predictions that we had made were correct. We also revised those predictions based on new data from Santee Cooper, and we also produced a report over the turn of the year entitled After the Iceberg, What is the Best Lifeboat for Santee Cooper? Today my attempt is to assess the many hours that you have invested in hearing about Santee Cooper and what the future of Santee Cooper should be, but this time it's not an ideological approach like I took in 1994. I think this is a more thoughtful, learned approach, and if it were possible, we'd love to have you hear from Dr. Player, who did the econometric analysis on this matter. First of all, I should ask, if you would, to sort of consider what you're looking at, a draft, but it is an attempt in a graphical way to assess what you've been hearing over the past few weeks as you've heard testimony from the three options that you were presented and by the Department of Administration. First of all, moving from left to right, and I will go through these very quickly, if I may, and these are just perceived risks of selling Santee Cooper as I have heard them, both in private conversations and in your testimony. There is a group of folks that just cannot imagine Santee Cooper ever having a parent company that is out of state. That is just sort of, I think, the perception that anyone from out of state must be a carpetbagger, and we certainly can't allow an in-state company to be owned by an out-of-state company. I will leave it to you to determine whether that is a valid opposition or valid criticism or not. And then again, and perhaps this is going to be truncated significantly by the chairman's comments about the legislation required. That was both generation legislation, some legislation related to securitization for that 4-year initial period. So that box may shrink after the chairman's comments and the speaker's assent to that. Then the question is, are liabilities that may be left to the state? The preponderance of the litigation, as we'll see later, has been settled, but there's still the issue of the Hearn lawsuit over the PD Energy campus plant that would be unsettled. I think there was some legislation related to Fluor that was unsettled, and then also pension liabilities that would be in that bucket there, or that line, liabilities left to the state. You'll see that I have reductions in workforce somewhat straddling the two between risks of selling and neutral, and part of that is because I did hear the remarks of the CEO of NextEra, and it appeared that he was backing up a bit on the significance of the reduction in workforce. If indeed that is a part of some new wrinkle to NextEra's offer, then it would be less of a risk and would move toward the neutral section. The neutral section, those are issues that are clearly important issues, but over time, as they've been ventilated here and in the Senate and under the work of the Department of Administration, issues like what would happen to the lakes, what would happen to the environment. I think it's pretty clear that whether Santee Cooper maintains their current management, whether management is rented to Dominion or whether there is a new owner, the lakes and the environment are not really a true concern. I don't think that economic development efforts really, if I may say, are a true concern as well. Santee Cooper would continue their work, and NextEra seems to be pretty good at that in other places, being a Fortune 200 company. Again, an issue that straddles the two is the Jessica Cook litigation. This was that complicated litigation that was made a class action suit that I think Justice Toll recorded a decision on that even in the last 24 hours. Again, it straddled because my initial thought was that was to the benefit of keeping Santee Cooper under its current management. But if NextEra's reaction to that is to continue to provide cash or funding for a lawsuit, then that could be both a benefit for NextEra, but it could also be a neutral factor. And then taxes, I'll skip down to taxes. That I'm considering a neutral factor because eventually a for-profit entity will need to be paying taxes to the state, which Santee Cooper currently does not do, but does pay a large fee to the state. And then rates. I think if I had predicted that we would be standing here today, that rates would have been on one side or the other. It really would have been a calling card for NextEra, or it would have been a benefit of not selling. But the more we seem to learn about rates, the Department of Administration's review of rates and those business as usual rates that we saw last year, and the analysis that Central has done, it seems to be that rates are really going to be about the same no matter what the future of Santee Cooper is. So I took the freedom there to list it in the center. And then as we look at the fulcrum here, clearly we are indicating, in our view, the benefits of selling are pretty overwhelming. And each one of these boxes, the size, and the reason I've asked you to mark it as a draft, because these boxes are clearly not proportional. But the Central, in their testimony, seems to have indicated, and they have a slide that they presented to you where they had checks and X's besides certain alternatives. They clearly indicated they thought that the NextEra sale proposal provided greater flexibility to them. That you will need to assess by talking to them, but it appears that they are comfortable with the freedom that they would get under a NextEra proposal. There are cost caps in NextEra's proposal. There is a more aggressive move to gas and away from coal. And then if these boxes, again, were proportional, I think the last two would be the largest. The fact that debt would be removed from rate base, the debt would be paid, and also a generous all-in cash offer. And then NextEra's favorite slide, it seems to be, was this one. I noticed that each presenter that you had a favorite slide. They said, don't forget this slide, or this slide, or this slide. So I have all three of those self-identified favorite slides that you heard. So, Mr. Chairman, that is just our analysis. Would like you to hear from our economists, but as far as policy proposals and the many different pieces of it, we see some falling in the middle, some not to sell, and some that will be a benefit of selling. So we just present that for your use and your feedback and comments.
Thank you. Any questions for Oran?